Howdy. So finally get around to this 8088 board on the logic analyzer. Analyzer 8088 board. It's been de-chipped, but I don't think the chips are. Yes, 640k of RAM. The programmable interrupt controller, the interval timer, the DMA controller, and the programmable peripheral interface, which is used for the keyboard, actually, as far as I recall correctly. They're all off, along with the BIOS ROM and the 4 basic ROMs. Basically, when I got this board, it was DOA, no post. So I've stripped it down, so all that's left on it, apart from all the glue logic, which you can't remove, all that's left on it is the 8088 processor, the 8288 bus controller, which is a tiny little thing out of sight. It deals with the demultiplexing of the address and data lines, because I just want to watch the address lines. That's why I'm wired 6 ways from Sunday across the ISA-bus. I'm kind of using that as my lazy man's monitor, and the 8284 clock generator, which is up here near the good old 14.31818 MHz clock crystal. Base clock of all computers to this day, 14.31818. It's something to do with the NTSC color burst signal, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. But basically, the reason it's stripped back so far is the first thing we're going to do is check the clock. I'll put some still pictures at the end of this video of the way this is all rigged up, 6 ways from Sunday. But basically, the way it's rigged up is I've got a scope line on the 8087's clock pin, because it shares a clock with the 8088, so I should be able to see whether or not the clock actually looks acceptable. I've got the high 16 bits on timing probe. So the high 16, and I'll explain why in a minute. I'm pulling its clock off the 4.77 MHz ISA bus clock, not the 14.31818 base clock, because ISA actually runs at 4.77 MHz, so that's why it's there. And I've got the low 8 bits, 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know, I've got the, no, I've got those 8 on the data lines. So I can watch the 8-bit data lines, and I can watch the high 16 bits of the address lines. The reason the high 16 bits for now is that behavior of an 8088, 8086 processor when it's turned on, contrary to the behavior of the 8080, is that it will jump to address FFFF0, which is the high 16 bits, and execute whatever happens to be there, which in the case of the way this is rigged now is nothing. It should just jump to FFFF on the high 16 bits and stick, and there just should be absolutely nothing. So first things first, we'll turn on the logic analyzer. I'm hoping that the picture will be moderately visible on the... Oh, it's not brilliant, but what I might do is come around again and... well, what I'll do is I'll bring everything in on the screen. Okay, there we go. So I've moved the camera so you can see on the scope a bit better. I use Autoscale. Probe's not 10:1. Probe is 100:1. Okay, looks good, looks good. Fire up the supply and auto-scale the clock. And then run that repetitive, and what we'll do is we'll tell it to connect the dots and put it on a grid. It's not the prettiest looking clock in the world, but if we go to auto measure, 4.77 roughly megahertz, that looks absolutely beautiful. So now what we'll do is we'll head across to state timing. Looks all good. Just auto scale that. Got no idea because I'm in the wrong mode. We want state, we want to run repetitive, and we actually want to configure that Configuration, format, yeah, we're watching all 16 bits. Done. Trace, not trace, listing. I don't know if you'll see that, you should in the bottom left corner. The chip here has jumped to FFFF. So if we turn it off and turn it on again, because turning it off and on again is always lots of fun. 0000 FFFF. So it's now waiting for something to jump to. There is nothing for it to jump to, so what we'll do is we'll turn it off and I will fit the BIOS ROM back to the board. Now, fitting just the BIOS ROM by itself should result in absolutely nothing different happening, because nothing different can happen. There's too much of the board missing. So we'll just fit the BIOS ROM back in, turn it back on, and we should see exactly the same behavior. It will jump to FFFF and it will stop there. There you go. If you want to have a look at the scope, there's my nice 14.3 or 4.77 clock. Looks pretty, actually. Peak to peak voltage of 1.25 volts. I don't actually know what anything else means. I don't. Looks like a 1/3 duty cycle, which sounds right. The 4.77 clock is about a 33% duty cycle. 76 nanoseconds on, 133 nanoseconds off. Sounds correct? Alright, so we now know that nothing else happens. So let's feed it the DMA controller, the 8237. The 8237 will probably cause the chip to start jumping all over the place. Okay, the 8237 and the BIOS chip are now fitted. It should do something, at least if I fit the chip to the correct socket. If I fit the chip to the wrong socket, it could get really bad. I see it going all over the place in RAM now. It's actually doing a lot in RAM. It's jumping to FFFF a lot. Okay, I'll just check that chip's not hot. No, okay, clearly I put it in the right hole. That's useful. Okay, so something's happening. It's going all over the place through RAM. So what we'll do is we'll now jump onto timing. I'm only connected to A1. Yep, I just lost my clock monitor. Okay, so I'm only connected to A1, so A2, we got nothing on A2, so we'll run that, and we'll now see the data coming across the data bus. There's our data. It's actually doing stuff. Okay, so I'll come back to timing. It's flicking through the RAM pretty quick. It's continually running to FFFF, which means that the chip, I think the chip is being reset. So what we need now is the programmable interval timer and the programmable interrupt controller. So we'll chuck, which one's the 5.9? So we'll chuck the interrupt controller in, and we'll just see if it behaves any differently. So we'll feed it the PIC. Does it behave differently? Behaves exactly the same. It's jumping in, jumping out, jumping in, jumping out. That's a good sign though. It means the ROM has something on it. So next we'll feed it the programmable interrupt. Hang on, the 8253. The 8253 is the interval timer. So we'll put that one in. And it can have itself some intervals. Okay. What do we get now? I'm still seeing a lot of FFs. It's trying. It's having a good crack at it. Okay, next to go in is the Programmable Peripheral Interface, the PPI. So, instead of off with your head, on with your chip. So, let's fit that in. see what the board has to say about that. Oops. Helps if all the pins go into the socket. Come on. Come out. You know you want to. Thank you. Okay, let's just straighten that. Bent pins. They were the days, weren't they? You think you got everything all right and hunky-dory, and you find that, you know, one pin ran away. Okay, we got the 8255 in. I'm just going to remove the clock scope. We're still resetting. That's okay. So what I'll do now I've got all the chips back in, is I'll put one bank of RAM in. Now, funnily enough, bank 0 in any configuration, so if you want any configuration of RAM up to 256K, it's 9 256K chips. Even if you're only telling it it's got 128K of RAM, you've still got to put 9 256K chips in bank 0. 640K of RAM is 18 256K chips and 18 64K chips. The two banks of 256 take you to 512. The next bank of 64 takes you to 576. The next bank of 64 takes you to 640. That simple. Right, so if we feed it a bank of RAM, do we still see a reset? No, it's counting through RAM now. Seems to be doing the same count, but no, it's not. Okay, so next we'll hook a keyboard controller up to it and check that the keyboard does a reset. It should. Not quite sure what... Oh, with the keyboard attached, we're stopping at 00B6. Huh. Curious. That stopped the memory test dead in its tracks. Just try that again. Right, and on. Yep, as soon as I touch the keyboard. Right, so we'll disconnect the keyboard and just see what happens. Like so. Right, that's running through everything now. Okay, so what does it look like up the data bus? It's not doing a great deal. Okay, so we'll come back across to state timing. Right, so what I'll do next, you won't see this just while I test it, is attach some sort of picture viewer. I have come to the conclusion, being it's summer down here now, that there's nothing I need more than the workshop AC running. Okay, so let me just whack this on and see what we get. I'm only reading 4 bits of data up the bus. Have I knocked the... No. No, I am simply not seeing anything that's going beyond 8-bit numbers. The data bus has had a hissy fit. The address bus. Right, there we go. Yeah, everything on the top end is FF. FFA2. The only thing I can think of is that I have a bad ROM. Let me just put it on the faster clock. Right, I've hooked the clock for this up to the 14.3 megahertz clock. Alright, so I'll get some really interesting behaviours of this every single time. Every time I turn it on, it's something different. This board's not happy. If I take the keyboard off it behaves completely differently. So what I'm seeing in the upper 20 bits is least significant, most significant. I'll look at it on the... So if we go to the chart, is it the chart? Nope. State. It's doing something a bit strange. So 8 bits of the bus are just stuck high. I think I have a bad ROM in this, but I'm not entirely sure. I mean, look. At least a bad ROM isn't a killer poke, so what I'll do is I'll actually switch the ROM that's in it out. I know what's on that ROM, but let's just... Okay, so now I've got a different ROM in here. We'll see if we get the same result. I see a lot of random. It's down around low memory though, but it's also jumping up into high memory. But that also could be the DMA controller. Just DMAing absolute rubbish all over the place. I'm not sure if it's a... I might have a replacement DMA controller to try in this. You know, I might actually have another DMA controller. I'm just going to go hunting. Okay, I don't have any donor chips. The other board's an 8086 and uses custom logic. So what I've done is I've put the scope on the memory right pin. If this BIOS is good and everything's happening, we should see memory high, pulse high, at least once as memory's written to. Maybe. That is not a nice square edge. Okay, I see 2 pulses to memory write immediately after the thing is switched on. Try that once more. So I see 2 pulses to mem write, which is a pin on the isobus to say that, hey, memory's been written to. Yeah, that time it just looked like junk. I'm going to try putting that on the ground plane. Right. That just looks like rubbish. Autoscale. Ah, look at that. There's stuff on the memory write line. Just going to reset the probe to that. Look, it's writing to memory. There are memory writes occurring here. Yet, I see nothing on the bus. I see nothing on the screen. Nothing is to obviousness happening. Nothing. Diddly. There's definitely writes happening there. I've changed the scope. The scope is now 1:1. There's writes. It's a lot of writes to memory. Actually, it's fairly neat now. That is almost a count. But that's just jumping all over the place. Let's just put the keyboard in. The 8259 and 8253, the PIC and the interval timer are getting warm. So we're seeing mem writes. We are. We know that it's trying to write to memory. And we've locked up. I wonder if I'm just introducing noise. No, because the data bus is fine. So let's just head back to the timing. Stuff. It's doing things. I think I'd need replacement chips to test, especially a ROM. I think one of the things I really need is another ROM to see if it's a ROM problem. Unfortunately, ROMs for this are fairly hard to come by. Okay, I put in a VGA card and I get a lot less action up the bus. I get little addresses. Pull the graphics card back out and we'll just see what happens. Nope, it's in a hissy fit again. I wonder if I've just got a bad ROM. Well, nothing's burninating my fingers, so everything's in the correct spot. It's just a matter of what line's having a hissy fit. Okay, one more test with the scope. I've hooked the scope up to DMA Acknowledge for channel 0. If we start seeing regular, nicely countable pulses there, it means that the memory refresh is getting set up in the DMA controller. If we see squiggly rubbish there, the DMA controller is probably broken, and if we're seeing nothing there, then we're not even programming the DMA controller. That doesn't look right to me. Oh no, there we go. It just reset. Something is very not happy with this board. So, if I pop that ROM chip, so I think this ROM is actually an XT ROM. I think the ROM is correct. I think I just need a whole nother set of chips to test this set of chips. Oh, I'm getting exactly the same behavior now. It's all over the place. It is absolutely everywhere. I think I will have to hold off on this until I can get more chips. However, that looks neat. But then the speaker pops. Yeah, it's just everywhere. It is just complete rubbish. I'll just try a new ground. What's a good ground? I've got a ground pin at B1. I just need something I can wedge in to hook the scope probe to for B1. Just see if I still get rubbish. Yeah, that's not what the DMA controller is supposed to look like. It's not happy. Right, last line to watch is just CPU bus cycles. As you can see, the CPU is doing bus cycles. I mean, some stuff is happening. It's just jumping all over the place. Nothing useful though. It is down in low memory, but it still doesn't seem to be doing what it is I'd expect. So, look, I probably need a postcard and a new BIOS chip. A new BIOS chip would help me determine whether or not that's the problem. See, as soon as I put the VGA card in, it just sticks in the high FF addresses. It's grumpy about something. I think I just need a BIOS chip to find out if that's the problem, so I've got to try and figure out where on earth I'm going to get M5L2764, so 64K flash chip, not flash, EEPROM, UV array. So I've got to try and find another BIOS for this, any XT clone BIOS. Preferably, you know, replacement DMA controller, PIC, all those, and just change parts out until I find out what's wrong. I'm hoping it's just the BIOS, because that would be awesome. I'd have a working board. Anyway, once I can find them, I'll do the other half of the video and I'll run a little bit more through the logic analyzer. I might point out that I am actually learning the logic analyzer as I use it, so I'm not that great with it, and there'll probably be a lot of people telling me, oh, you're doing it wrong. Well, I probably am doing it wrong, but that's because there isn't a book to tell me how to do this. I am making it up as I go along. Anyway, thanks for watching.